Okay, so we've got the same chord progression here in this chorale as we had in the last one that we found some errors in, but just taking a glance at this, I'm seeing that there's probably going to be a lot more errors in this one. So I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm going to let you do some of these on your own, but a couple things to look for here as we check the spelling. I think the chords might be spelled correctly, but check for doubling. Okay, check for doubling again, especially, I'm just looking at this 7 diminished 6 chord. Again, there the bass should be doubled in this. This is a G, B, D, the bass on a B. If we don't double the bass on this, then we're doubling something else, which is a member of an unstable interval or even the leading tone. So in this case, it looks like I've doubled the G with the G, and that's a improper doubling. Okay, I doubled the leading tone. Can't ever do that. Okay, why not? Well, that leading tone is a very emphasized note already. It's a very strong note in the key. You double that, it's going to sound kind of gross. Another thing that causes you problems is if you actually resolved your leading tones correctly. Let's say I did it right like I'm supposed to, and I put the G up to an A here, and the G and the soprano up to an A here. Then I've got parallel octaves. So either you're going to run into parallel octaves or unresolved leading tones and a doubled leading tone. So lots of errors that happen because of that first error. So this is a doubling problem, and you'll notice that we did not resolve the leading tone correctly. So I'm just going to also write unresolved leading tone. I can abbreviate that. Okay, so I've got problems there just from that improper doubling. You'll notice here that this soprano note is pretty high. Some people might argue that that's in the soprano range. I'm going to say that's out of the soprano range. So circle that and just write range there. Okay, there's an obvious spacing error right there. Where the soprano and the alto are more than an octave apart. And that's an error. Okay, then you could look for a parallel motion. There's going to be some other spacing errors in here. There's going to be lots of weird leaps going on. For example, if I just looked at the soprano line, I've got leap, another leap, another leap. That's consecutive leaps. That's going to cause you some problems. Another leap. Everything is a leap in the soprano. This one here is more than a fifth, so leap greater than a fifth. Another leap. Okay, so it's all consecutive leaps that causes lots of issues. One thing that you need to be aware of if you have lots of leaps is the danger of what we call consecutive octaves. And that's any time that the same voices are an octave. If they're an octave apart or 2 octaves apart, they're on the same note, pitch class. Okay, I've got a doubling that happens in the same 2 voices in the next chord. Whether they went to that octave in the same direction or not, it's considered consecutive octaves. I'm not seeing an example of that in this right now, but if, for example, the weird doubling that we have in this second to last chord between the tenor note and the soprano note, G and G, the soprano jumps up a fourth if the tenor, instead of only going down a third, if the tenor went down to the C, down a fifth, then they both go to a C. So we're going from this octave, G to G, to this octave, C to C. That would be what we call consecutive octaves. It's the same problem as parallel octaves. They just didn't get there in parallel motion. So consecutive octaves through contrary motion. That would be an error. Just wanted to make you aware of that. So the next thing you might want to check for, well, there's all kinds of problems, but make sure you check for voice overlap, voice crossing. Sometimes that's not as obvious in the tenor and alto, so check on that. You've got a couple weird doublings going on with the tenor and alto. There is that voice overlap where we have these other errors here with that soprano note jumping down more than an octave. Becomes a voice overlap with the previous alto note. Wow, terrible handwriting, sorry. Yeah, lots of crazy stuff going on here. There's a few doubling errors. There's a couple more spacing errors that you might find. So have fun with that.